Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and the system that you see right here, it's what they refer to as the VermiBag Tote, because I guess it's meant to fit inside of a storage tote. In the place of a storage tote, I'm just using a bus box, and I've also run this bag in a wooden frame. Gives the outer surface a whole lot more breathing room, allows things to get a little bit more dry in there. Inside the plastic tub, the system does a pretty good job hanging on to its moisture. But what we've got going on here, this little gray puddle you see in the middle, there's another couple of them here and there in other locations. Those are all piles of dead gnats or fruit flies or whatever it is that's been camping out here in my systems. The powder, the diatomaceous earth, I've been applying it. It's this stuff right here. Except I'm out. I usually have this little, this double cup so that the holes that are on the bottom don't line up, and then the stuff doesn't fall through as readily. And then a third cup that's got the same sort of holes on it as the cover, and this sort of becomes my shaker applicator. And I've been doing this on a few of my systems, and this system's been this way for the past 15 days, ever since we last fed it. We gave it a feeding of potatoes. Let me see if I can collect all of the casualties here, at least the ones that are on the surface that we can easily size up. So it wasn't a whole lot of this powder. You could see once the powder all gets pulled into the middle here, it's like probably less than a teaspoon of the material. Just a pinch. But you can see how many of these fruit flies or whatever it is that the system has taken care of for us. You can see a lot of them are still just getting caught up in this stuff, but there was already a whole bunch of them that had already succumbed to the diatomaceous earth. It just sort of gets caught up in their body parts and prevents them from being able to fly and get away, and just impedes their mobility in general. And it, I think it also sort of cuts into their system a little bit, and makes them lose whatever little moisture that their body has got. So it's pretty effective stuff from what I can tell, and I'll be applying it in more places more often, I believe. I've just been a little stingy with it lately. I don't know why. I would have to assume that once all of these little guys are goners, the worms can probably take care of them. So I'm just going to dump them right in here, and we'll blend them in, and then the diatomaceous earth will also serve as just a kind of an added mineral down here within the system. And I'll have to reset my little applicator so we can sprinkle more down when we're finished feeding. Nice dampness under the plastic coverings. Oh, I guess we got some caught up over here too. Yeah, I mean, last time we came in here, we were observing a lot of these little guys camped out underneath the stitching in the seams of the bag. That's why we wanted to lay out traps for them. And I don't know how many of them are still hiding out like that. But I'd like to think that we're managing to get the majority of them out, taken care of, I don't know. Alright, I feel like burying these little guys. Let's do that. I'm just going to do away with our little flying insect situation. We'll resume the trapping and elimination of them by putting some more DE across the top surface once we're done here. Let's get that whole blending in situation taken care of. A lot of times when we would come in here in the past, we would check the outer edges, especially this outer edge closer to me where there's a pretty good size air gap that flows behind the bag over here in between the plastic container. These sides over here, they stay really damp because those sides are up against the plastic. But even over here where it normally dries out a little bit, it's nice and damp. It's kind of cool when you finally see the material transform into a consistency where it just hangs on to its own moisture and doesn't need to be so well protected from evaporation and drying and stuff like that. I'm sure we could probably even go with some sort of a less waterproof covering that might allow for a little bit more airflow. Maybe a piece of paper across the top. I think for now I'm just going to stick to keeping nice damp conditions in here by covering up with the plastic again. The plastic's a great place to put the diatomaceous earth down too, you know. So I think the coverings, when we put everything back together after we're done feeding, will be much the way we found it. Now the stuff that they got last time, we had a few sheets of cardboard laying around in here. They had been serving as top coverings for the longest time, and we decided to finally incorporate those 2 sheets of cardboard down into our feeding so that they can also get a chance at being broken down by the worms. You know, after 15 days, it's quite possible that we'll see very few leftovers. They received a whole bunch of potato peel. Well, here's a bunch of leftover. And it's usually the soft actual potato on the peel that they nibble off first. Then these skins, you know, the potato peels themselves will go too eventually. This is interesting too, how these castings are just somehow a little bit drier than the material around it. The potatoes, I guess, probably gave off the majority of their moisture at this point. Those little peels probably don't have a lot of moisture content left to them. But the castings are all nice and damp down here. I don't know if I'm like releasing insects or something. They're starting to swarm a little bit over here. Alright, so the worms, you know, seem to like potato. I figured they would. Oh, geez. I think we must have hit a little extra cache of potato. So there was, I think it was a cardboard layer with potato and then another cardboard layer with more potato. Oops. So we may have actually breached one of the cardboard layers or something. So I think that's what we're seeing here. These larger chunks of cardboard are what's left of that thing. Admittedly, I was pretty rough. I probably just went ahead and pierced it and tore it up in this process. But I wasn't attempting to preserve it or reuse it at this point. Oh, we definitely got a nice little collection of worms. There must be a bunch of potato in this pile here that they've not yet eaten. 15 days later, you know? You'd think that the majority of the food that they've been given would be gone by now. And you know, as we look through it, there is peel. And I guess there must be still some potato on the peel that's, you know, causing them to swarm around it like that. So that's kind of cool. A lot of my bins where I've got night crawlers running, I don't get to observe that swarming sort of behavior. But when you're in your red wiggler bins, and I guess the blue worms do it too, they have a greater tendency to kind of create a little buzz around the food that they're eating and mob around it. So it's a little bit more exciting, I believe, feeding worm bins that have worms that do that. It's sort of a fun behavior as far as I'm concerned. And you know, the worms that do that are actually some of the best worms to run worm bins with, the red wigglers and the blue worms. So we've opened up a nice big hole. I don't even know what we've done with our little buried insects over here. Maybe that's what we're seeing, is they're just sort of escaping, climbing through the stuff that we buried them in. I mean, no, they can't be flying away. Any one of those little guys that had the diatomaceous earth all over their body, those guys are never flying again, that's for sure. Alright, so I've got, let's see, no food. So I got to run up to the freezer to get some stuff for them. They got potato last time. Not sure what I've got handy. I'll have to check. So let's take a break now. And we'll return to this with some food and get them taken care of. Alright, break time. There's a number of different things in here, including a frozen paper towel. Most of it's lettuce. You can see there's carrot, radish, a variety of different salad type things. And I've also got my my shaker for the diatomaceous earth reloaded, so we can cover the plastic after we're done feeding. And I've also got my worm chow. I'm going to give a little bit of that with the feeding too. So I guess the nice thing to have down here would be some sort of bedding, you know. I mean, we reused those cardboard coverings, and it does seem like they did away with a good portion of it, although we saw pretty good size pieces of it here and there. I've got a feeling that stuff will just continue to break down. I'm just trying to think of what kind of bedding could we include with today's feeding, a type of bedding that might not sit around forever. I mean, I don't know, a couple pieces of paper, one of them frozen that I can't really spread out much. The other one I could probably open up a little before we spread food onto it. And let's see, grit. Do we need grit? You know, a system that's this old already, you know, 140 some odd days old. I think this will be its 16th feeding at this point. I'm sure that the system's got tons of grit in it. The worms are probably all taken care of from the perspective of having the grit that they need. So I don't think I'm going to worry about grit today. Here's that other piece of paper. We'll just chuck it in there. It'll soften up and we can unfold it next time we're in here. So this stuff is all pretty finely chopped. I think I even saw some cucumber pieces in there. So let's commingle a little bit of this with some of the worm chow. This is all kinds of seeds and grains pulverized together, just run through the blender, little mini blender. And then I guess the rest of the food right on top of that. It's tempting to give them some grit, but I don't think it's that important to do so. I could see a lot of leftover potato here. I'm assuming they're just going to keep nibbling away on that after we cover things up here. The nice thing about the plastic covering is that it does allow the material all over the bin to stay nice and damp on the surface so the worms feel comfortable hanging out right there on the surface, coming up for that moisture. And the material out on the surface doesn't end up sitting there and remaining dry. This is some sort of like a reinforcing strand inside some of that tape, I believe, that was on the Amazon boxes. And I think for the most part it's gone, but that piece, for whatever reason, must have been sheltered from deterioration for whatever reason. So I just placed it on top of the lettuce there. It should give it a little bit more action. And I think we're more or less done here. Just trying to level off so that when we put the plastic covering back on, it could lay flush and pretty much go out edge to edge. Although at this point I think we're doing a pretty good job hanging on to the moisture, even in the places that have been most subject to drying, like out here on these sides where the airflow sneaks in alongside the side of the container, between the container and the tub that it's resting in. So either way, I like the plastic coverings. At some point, we'll probably try to promote drying in here in the near future, but for now, I think the added moisture is good for the worms to be able to break down all the leftovers in here, and at some point we might actually transition to not feeding, letting the worms just really work on leftovers rather than giving them fresh stuff. Really work the stuff down into just a fine castings only consistency. So here's my fancy shaker. I'm actually shaking it through that bottom surface that's got the misaligned holes, because it does seem like the material drops through one of the holes and then drops through the second one pretty easily too, and it's creating a nice fine dusting. Seems to work quite nicely. And I guess we'll throw a little here in the middle too. When the bugs land, they can have a nice little landing strip to drop onto, and they'll be surprised at what happens next to them. Alright, so hopefully the battle against bugs is one that I'm making some ground on. Here and there, the diatomaceous earth does seem to be, showing some good signs of working. But whether or not we can really knock out enough of them so that they can stop breeding and stop hiding from me, it'd be nice. So hopefully that day is going to be in the near future. Alright everyone, I got a few things I got to put away and whatnot, but I'm not going to keep you around for that. I'm going to sign off now, but before I do, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to leave me a quick thumbs up. That's always very much appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching.